So all the films I do, every piece of writing I do is all about my process of purification. So all the things that have troubled me, all the things, for instance, like I said, working the door was a seed that gave me a wisdom seed, and I was able to understand what the door taught me at a level more than other people perhaps, because I wrote about it and I went around the country and around lots of countries teaching it. So I was learning to articulate what I'd learned for other people. So I was learning to expand the knowledge I'd got from working as a bouncer to the point that I understood it as a metaphysical experience. So I thought, well, rather than just do it in one book, I can do it in film, I can do it in theatre, I can do it in articles, I can do it in podcasts, and I can tell people the truth that I found. And as I explain it to other people, my own understanding expands as well. So at the beginning, I thought Watch My Back was just the anecdotal tales of a nightclub bouncer. Now, 30 years on, I know it was a very powerful metaphysical experience, and I've only been able to understand it because I wrote it in film, and I only understand it at that level because I didn't just write film. I wrote film for people like Ray Winston and Paddy Considine. In my mind, I was writing for people at that level. I want people at that level to be able to read the words. So in my mind, I set the standard really high for myself. And I thought, I can't give these people stuff if it hasn't got truth. So they recognised truth. And that's what led on to Brown Paper Bag.
So you were nominated for the BAFTA for Bouncer, then let's go on to Brown Paper Bag. Where did that come from?
I wrote Brown Paper Bag while we were on the set with Bouncer. So Brown Paper Bag was Ronnie's was in NA and AA, and he was very open about it. You know, he did lots of talks about it and stuff, and he used to tell these amazing stories. He's a fantastic storyteller. My brother had recently died from alcoholism, and I wanted to explore that because to my family it was you can't look at this, you can't go there, you know, this is dirty washing, we don't want it done in public. And I'm like, no, it's not dirty washing, this is my brother, this is my brother, this is my brother, it's not dirty washing. Let's be clear about one thing, this is not dirty washing. I love this man, but I'm fucking angry at him. I'm so angry at him because he's left 4 beautiful kids and he's left a wife. And he's chosen alcohol over everybody else. And I'm so angry at him. But I love him so much that I daren't voice my anger. And my dad comes to the hospital, pissed. And I am so angry with my dad, when he kicks off with the nurses, I grab him by the collars and I run him into the wall. And I'm so angry at him. How dare you come here pissed up when my brother's dying? And I'm so angry at my mum because my mum keeps saying, don't tell anybody what your brother's dying of. Don't tell anybody why your brother's in hospital. Nobody needs to know. It's nothing to do with anybody else. And I'm so angry at all this, but I don't want to voice my anger because I don't understand it. How can you be angry at your brother when you love him? I love him. I'm watching him die. I'm watching him implode. I love him. So I write the film. And man, it was such a revelation. I wrote it for Ronnie because I love Ronnie. But of course, it's the story of my brother, disguised. You know, the protagonist is a girl, not a man, and all that. And I wanted to write why people get caught into alcoholism and the tragedy of it. And in the film, I did 2 films in there. I did a Brown Paper Bag and I did 3 Sacks Full of Hats, which we'll talk about in a minute. But in the films, I use my writer's voice to accuse my dad, to accuse my mum, to be angry at my brother. And I realised when I did it that, you know, that my dad didn't know how to cope without a drink. He just didn't know how to cope. That was just how he'd been brought up. That was his conditioning. He would have thought nothing about having a pint and then coming to the hospital when my brother was dying from alcohol. He would not have thought about that. It wouldn't have been a sin for him. It's just how he lived. It's how he'd been brought up. I've worked all my life for a drink. I've earned a drink. As my dad used to say, I've earned a bastard drink. Don't you tell? I'll have a drink if I want to have a drink. Don't you worry about that. But that's how he's been brought up. He doesn't know any different. My mum is more afraid of shame than an assassin's bullet. That is a powerful force. I understand fear. Fear's had me cowering in the bedroom. I understand it. So I don't need to judge my mum. I need to have compassion for her. I don't need to judge my dad. My dad is just coping. There's no room for me to judge my dad. And I don't need to judge my brother because my brother hasn't chosen alcohol. My brother is possessed. My brother's gone. He's not there. You know, something else is in my brother's body. Something else. A parasite. It's not my brother. He broke through every now and again. It doesn't mean he can't escape it, because people do. But that was not my brother. My brother had been taken over by this parasitical addiction, and he could not escape it. Even though he got 4 beautiful kids, he wasn't a choice he made. And the end is he'd had what they call an enforced abduction of his will force. He'd got no will.
Did he try and get help at any point?
Yeah, he tried to. In the end, my brother was so afraid that he couldn't leave. Not that he couldn't leave his flat. My brother couldn't leave. He couldn't. He lived between the doorway of his kitchen sat on a stool, and the hallway where he slept in a tent. And he slept in a tent because demons were trying to get him. So he just lived between. His world shrank to that. I watched his world shrink to a hospital bed, and I watched him. You know, I was with him when he died, so I watched how heinous it was. And that's the one thing he taught me: fear will shrink you if you listen to it. So there was one point in one of the films where my character says to my mum, "I'm tired of your shame," and she says, "You're the one that's ashamed." And I'm like, "Me? What am I ashamed of?" She said, "You're ashamed of us." And I was like, "Man, I am." When my dad turned up drunk, I was so ashamed, Paul. I was squirming in my skin, but I didn't recognise it. I projected it onto my mum. And when my mum was ashamed and kept saying, you know, my mum was frightened. She was terrified. It's very real for her. So when she said, "Don't let people know," she was frightened of judgment. We'd grown up with that. Don't bring shame to the door. I just loved her so much. I felt compassion for her fear. I had no right to judge my mum. I've run away from loads of things because of fear. So in writing the film and telling my truth, my characters spoke back to me and told me what I needed to see. And that's what enabled me. That's what freed me. Because afterwards, I was able to let go of all that judgment and just feel compassion for my mum, compassion for my brother, compassion for my dad, absolute compassion, no judgment at all.
It was a brilliant film.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it?
Because I can see what you're saying. Brown paper bag, and what we'll come on to.
3 Sacks
with
for the
3
hat.
Sacks, there's a continuity with them. There's a thread.
3 Sacks was braver.
Yes,
because 3 Sacks is verbatim. That's how it happened, pretty much. Obviously, it's romanticised. It's, you know, there's artistic license, but it's basically the story about how my brother died, and the nature of shame, the nature of fear, the nature of perception and conditioning.
Would you say that, especially when in the time that your father and mother grew up, it was a time that people didn't talk? It was a time that you just, keep calm, carry on.
Well, listen, when I brought my BAFTA to my mum's, she'll see I'm a writer. You know, she'll be pleased with this. I went in, and I was like 12 again. I was just trembling because I could feel the atmosphere. The atmosphere was so cold and so dark. And I said, "What's up?" "Nothing's up." I said, "Well, something's up because you aren't right. What's wrong?" I said, "I've just brought my BAFTA to show you." "Yeah, very nice. Very, very nice, yes." And I said, "What's wrong?" Then it clicked. There'd been a news item on that day on the television, and the producer was talking about the fact that it was based on my brother's life. And I said, "Oh, is this to do with Natasha being on the telly?" She said, my dad goes, "Yes, we don't want our dirty washing done in public." I said, "It's not dirty washing, Dad." I said, "It's my brother." I said, "I'm not ashamed of him." My mum said, "Well, we are." Now, that's not putting them down. That's fear. That's fear talking. And I understood it, but I was trembling. So every time I've gone to make a film, Paul, I'm not dealing with just writing about, this is a film about a bouncer. This is a film about an alcoholic. I'm writing about stuff that none of my family want to see because they're frightened of looking at it. They're frightened of, all of them are. And I understand because I'm frightened of looking at it as well. And I'm frightened of looking at the fact that if I allow it, my wings will be clipped by family, by friends, by social pressures, by the mores. If I'm afraid, like I've written a book now called 99 Reasons to Forgive, and I'm talking about forgiveness, people don't want to hear about forgiveness. They don't want to hear that it's a panacea, that it's about letting it go and about giving over the anger. And they want to hold on to these things because it's a perception. It's what they know. So if you're going to write the truth, there's a lovely old saying. It says, when a writer's born into the family's dead. And it just basically means if he's a good writer, he wants to tell the truth. And he wants to tell the truth not to upset anybody, but to free them. Just before we made, I'll come on to it in a minute, but just before we made 3 sacks full of hats, and we got a great cast for this as well, I remember getting very, very anxious about it and just thinking, that lots of us being assailed by lots of voices again, lots of energies, lots of things trying to stop me from telling the truth. And they were saying, you've abandoned your family, you've sold your family out. And in the end, talk
you out of
trying to talk me out of doing the film. So in the end, I could hear these voices and I was watching them. So I went straight to God and I said, look, I'm doing this film because I'm called to do it. I feel it's what you want me to do. You want me to talk about this and tell this story so it can help myself and help other people. I said, if it's not what you want me to do, please give me a sign and I'll bin it. I'll sack it. I'm not interested in doing anything that doesn't serve you. Anything. This was the night before the shoot. And the next morning I woke up and I was in a meditation, and in my meditation I was with my mum. Obviously my biggest fear was that it would upset my mum, and this was felt like a mortal terror to me. So in the film I was with my mum and I was holding her arms. I was just holding her arm like that, and I was so calm and compassionate. I said, Mum, I'm just cleaning. I'm just cleaning, Mum. I'm cleaning for Ray because Ray couldn't clean. I'm cleaning for my dad because my dad couldn't clean. And I'm cleaning for you because I know it's difficult for you to clean. I'm cleaning for us, and I'm doing it because God's asked me to do it. And she understood.
Wow.
Bump. And then I just went and did the film. And we had miracles on that film. There's all sorts of things happened. It was very, very metaphysical. So none of it's just about making a film. Most of it's about going, I'm going to write this film. This is a good idea. And then you suddenly go, what will so-and-so think? What will so-and-so think? I remember a journalist saying to me once, do you use the C word in your films? I said, well, only if it's called for, if the characters need it. He said, I'm working with intellectuals that won't even entertain a film if it's got the C word. I said, you're a journalist, aren't you? And he said, yeah. I said, I'll tell you what to do. I said, go around all your friends, your family, all your associates, pick all the words that they don't like. I said, and see what you're left with. You'll be left with nothing. You'll have an empty page. I said, I'm not writing to please people, and I'm not writing because I'm afraid of people. That doesn't mean I don't want to please people, and it doesn't mean I'm not afraid. I'm both, but I'm going to do it anyway. Mm. I've got both forces, and I'm going to place myself as a burnt sacrifice, because the filament doesn't just conduct energy, it burns. And I'm going to create this because I'm called to create it. So Brown Paper Bag, I remember I wrote it, and I remember thinking, this feels strong. It feels so strong. It feels so emotional. And I remember sending it to the producers, and them going, no, don't see it, I don't get it. And I goes, you need to read it again. You need to read it again. It's there.
Did they say what they couldn't see?
No, it was. I don't know what it was. I think it was just sometimes it's just too big. You're just like that. You just can't see it. And again, it wasn't unkindness. But I knew I could feel it.
Did they say rewrites? Did they give any points? They just couldn't see the whole film.
But when they shot it, I remember Natasha, who was a producer, she broke her back to do that film. She remortgaged her house to do it. We ended up making it for $3,500. I paid for the food. One of the other producers paid for the hotels for the actors. Natasha, paid all the miscellaneous stuff. And I remember the first cut they sent me through, because obviously Natasha invested so much in it. At one point, she said, I sat in Euston Station, so stressed about it, she said, I just burst into tears and sat on the floor. And the policeman come up to her and said, are you okay? And she said, it was just so much. And it's because it had truth in it, Paul.
Yeah. Do you know what I was going to say before?
Let me just tell you this, just finish before I go on. The first cut she sent me through, she said, we can't put this out to anybody. It doesn't work. It's rubbish. I'm really sorry, Geoff. We can't even put this to a festival. And I watched it and I said, something similar to what I said to you later. I said, my problem with this film, Natasha, isn't that it's not good enough. My problem is I'm never going to be able to write anything as good again because it's so good. And she said, I'm not sure. But she was just too close to it.
This film, Brown Paper Bag, it had some things that you didn't want to look at. The most difficult things that you don't want to look at are the ones that you should be doing.
Yeah, the ones you need to do,
You said that you had that epiphany with your mum and your dad about cleaning. But the reason why I think this film won a BAFTA is because it didn't just help clean your mum and dad, but whoever watches it, it can help clean.
Yeah, that's the whole idea. Yeah. It's saying you're not a monster. You're somebody's son. You're somebody's daddy. You know, you're somebody's uncle. You're somebody's brother. I idolised my brother. He was my older brother. And I loved him. He was one of the bravest people I've ever met, and I had to watch him die. You know, I idolised him. So it's this sense that it's saying this isn't some anonymous guy on a bench having it large from a brown paper bag. This is somebody's brother. All of these kids that are sleeping in doorways and on park benches, they're family, they're people. You know, we should be affected by the fact that people are dying in front of us and we step over them to get to the sales. We should be looking at that, and I'm not saying that you can do everything about that, but from what God's asking me to do, He's saying you've experienced this, just write the truth and nothing more. But to write the truth, I've got to risk losing my family, and I've got to risk. But all of those things that come up and assail me, what happens to them, Paul? They're negative energies. The moment I place a conduit, a filament between the two, all of those negative energies that rise up get sucked into the mix and they get used as the burnt sacrifice. So the sin is the burnt sacrifice. The negative energy is the burnt sacrifice that is part of the film. You need that energy.
Well, that's what you're writing about. You're saying, I'm going to look at these dark areas and bring that out. And they're the ones that are fighting back. I'm just curious to know if you had any other further conversations with Natasha, whether she came forward and did she, I mean, maybe it's a personal thing you don't want to talk about, but her initial reaction of this can't go out, was there reasonings behind it? I mean, had she...
No, I think
did she know someone? Or?
No, she just invested so much in the film that she just couldn't see it. A bit like when I saw Bouncer. I just literally couldn't see it. I didn't know if it was good, bad or indifferent. I was so close to it. I was so invested in it.
I thought maybe with Bouncer and Brown Paper Bag, because it's so personal to you, you're a bit nervous about, you know...
No, I just couldn't see it. And she just couldn't see this. It wasn't that, you know, she just literally couldn't. She just said, I can't see it. Right. And I just said, have a look again. It's great. It's a piece of art. I said, it's heartbreaking.